Welcome to another edition of the Guardian Angels of Justice and Peace with your host, Pearl Polto, and for the first time,
Josie Brandon.
from the Philadelphia area. It's so good to have Josie sitting beside us right now, the two hosts of the Justice and Peace. But as I always say, Josie, what is our topic today?
Well, we've been getting a lot of emails and questions from our viewers, and they're talking about how can we identify toxic relationships? Because a lot of times people don't know what a toxic relationship is. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
I mean, when you say toxic relationship, what a guy goes with a girl goes with a guy, how could you tell if you're in love, not in love, or if it's toxic, or how would you know? How would anybody know?
That is really a great question, and that's really what we're going to talk about, because usually you don't see the signs at the very beginning of the stages of a relationship. You start seeing them as the relationship evolves. So let's get an example. So if you're someone out there who's feeling physically drained, let's say you're someone who you usually felt good about yourself, you had all these activities you were involved with, and all of a sudden you start feeling strained or stressed out or drained, that would be a sign that you're in a relationship that could potentially be toxic, because you feel like your partner may be imposing some things on you that you didn't really expect.
So in other words, what you're saying is you're not being honest with your spouse, so you're keeping it in, and that makes you toxic. Let's say you're intimidated with your spouse because you don't want to hurt their feelings, so that means that you're going to keep it in. That makes your relationship toxic.
Well, okay, so let's first talk about it, because it doesn't just have to be a spouse. It could be someone you're dating. It could be anybody that's in your life. A toxic relationship can be, God forbid, it could be with a parent, it could be with a child, it could be with anyone, it could be a toxic situation.
Okay.
But basically what happens is that, yes, you're in a relationship. Let's talk about relationships. Let's keep it simple, because that's really what the viewers are asking about.
Okay.
They're in a relationship, and how do you identify if you're in a toxic one? So the thing is that if you, at the beginning of the relationship, if you had, let's say you felt good about yourself, things were going great, and all of a sudden you start seeing these things creep into your life. Let's say you start feeling more insecure about yourself. Maybe the person that's in your life is minimizing you. They're making you feel small. They're saying these little things. Maybe they're making comments about the way you look, your weight, your hair, the things that you do. That's what we're talking about, paying attention to those signs.
But isn't that the word control?
Okay, control is another sign. Control is another sign of being in a toxic relationship. Yes, they are trying to control you.
If somebody's putting you down by saying they don't like this, they don't like that, well, that's a sign of control, because they're not really saying, they're not complimenting you.
Yes, but you have to, sometimes you have to realize where it's coming from, because there's ways that I always say, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So there are going to be people that do love you, and they're trying to give you an opportunity to get better. But you need to learn to identify the ones that are saying things to you that are designed to make you feel better, or are they saying things to you because they don't feel good about themselves, and so they're trying to minimize you as a person to make themselves feel better.
Yeah, see, that's a good point there. I think you have to stress this, because when I always say it like it is to anybody, to the person, and sometimes honesty is the best thing of telling a person what's wrong or what's not wrong. But if you're telling them what's wrong and not wrong for the wrong reasons, they're doing it for their self-gratification because of control, or because they're trying to intimidate you, or they feel bad about themselves. That's what you're saying. In other words, they could be doing it but how would you know then? How would you know which motive they're doing it for?
Okay, that is a great question, because a lot of times we have what's called the gut feeling, but we don't acknowledge the gut feeling. Intuition. You have this feeling, but you're like, oh, maybe. Then this is what happens. You start saying, maybe it is me. Maybe I am this. Maybe it is that. Maybe, you start to question yourself all the time. Signs of a potential toxic relationship. The other thing is, how many times have we walked? I mean, you hear the stories about these wonderful, vibrant, whether women or very vibrant men who were great when they were single, and all of a sudden they got into a relationship, and they're coming into work every day, and all of a sudden you start seeing that slow effect of change in them. They're not feeling good about themselves. They're wondering where that person is, or maybe they're starting to cheat, that the person is cheating on them. You start seeing a change. Signs of a toxic relationship. So it's not only the gut feeling that you're talking about, but sometimes people around you are able to see things before you see them yourself.
I've always heard that. You always hear from people saying, I've heard from this one, and I'm not seeing it. But does that make you blind where you're believing it? But if you're blind and you're believing it, then that's just low self-esteem on the person, not just the toxic relationship. I think if they're believing it, then it's a low self-esteem on their part. What do you think?
Well, I think we have to be careful what we identify as low self-esteem, because sometimes by recognizing something in our lives, like if we're recognizing it, that's really an opportunity to say you start to raising your self-esteem, because when you start raising your self-esteem, it's because you're not no longer ignoring them. You start paying attention to it. But you have to start realizing whether or not are you asking these questions that are minimizing you. Is it because you're involved in a relationship where someone's starting to make you feel that way? Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. You know, when we come back, we're going to take a mini commercial. When we come back, we're going to see how can we resolve, how can we correct the situation, or should we be, I'm going to ask you, should we be with the person that you're talking about, or should we just call it quits? When we come back, we'll be right back.
There's nothing more disruptive and annoying than getting an automated call to your cell phone. There are laws against companies using computers or recorded messages to call you on your cell phone without your permission. This is consumer protection attorney Carrie Flitter. You've heard me as a guest on the Pearl Polto Show. There are consumer laws in place that prohibit many of the unwanted calls to your cell phone. If you're receiving unwanted or unauthorized calls, whether collection, selling products or services, or otherwise, you may be entitled to have these calls stopped and to collect money damages that the law provides. If you're getting unwanted or pre-recorded calls to your cell phone, contact us, the Consumer Protection Lawyers at Flitter Lorenz, at 888-668-1225. That's 888-668-1225, or online at consumerslaw.com. That's consumers with an S, consumerslaw.com. If we accept your case, the bad guys pay our bill.
You're listening to the Garden Angels of Justice and Peace with Josie and Pearl, live here, right? Live here in the Philadelphia area. And we're talking about today a toxic relationship that you could be in, and some of you are in, and you don't even understand maybe that you're not in. And it could be low self-esteem. It could be your spouse. It could be, and you're sitting there saying, maybe I'm in this relationship. Well, we're going to continue this because we're going to talk to Josie, ask Josie, and find out why, if you should be in this relationship. What should a person do if they're watching this and they're saying, wow, I'm going with a person, it could be anybody, as you say, but I feel low about myself. I don't feel good about myself. I'm constantly fighting. I'm constantly yelling and screaming. So there's got to be something. Is that a toxic? Because I'm constantly yelling and screaming because I don't get along with them? I mean, what's the meaning of the word?
Well, first of all, the first thing I would say to somebody is good for you that you're starting to ask yourself questions. Because most of the time, if people don't ask the questions, that they're trying to ignore something that they know is tapping on them, like pay attention to this. So it's a good thing that they're recognizing that there's something there. I'm a firm believer in having a sheet of paper and writing down things so that you can really identify exactly what's going on in your situation. So what I would recommend to somebody is that if you are, let's say you're in a relationship and you start seeing these things, I would want someone to take out a sheet of paper and say, before I ever met this person, this is really how I felt about myself. And be real. I mean, if you didn't feel good about yourself before you entered in this relationship, you could have invited this person in your life because you were feeling low. And so you're attracting that of which you are, exuding. Okay. So write down a list. Where were you before the relationship? Were you feeling good about yourself? How were you about your career? How were you about your weight? How were you about your personal things going on in your life? Make a checklist, your financial situation before you met this person. And how did you go ahead and live your life? Did you go out? Were you an outdoorsy person? Were you doing things with your friends? Were you involved with your family? That's what were you like before? And then make the list after you're involved in this relationship. Are you still doing the same things? Are you still going out with your family? Are you spending time with your family? Or is this person pushing you away from your family? Are you still going out with your friends and doing some simple things? Or is this person telling you, no, don't do that? Are you still doing the things? Are you working on your career goals like you were before you met this person? Or is this person saying you need to focus on this instead? And you're realizing more and more you're not doing all the things that you were doing before. Because a lot of times we get so caught up in the first part of the relationship, the exciting, the romantic side of it, and then all of a sudden real things start happening, and before you know it, you're in a toxic relationship. So these are some of the things that I would tell somebody.
So if they're in a toxic relationship and all these things that you're saying, which means the step 2 could have been to a marriage, and step 3 could have been they would be getting a divorce because they're not even sure they're in a toxic relationship from step 1, and all these signs are coming up on them.
And one thing I was going to say about that, because this is the great thing, is that if you're not married yet and you have already started seeing these signs, that's the time you get excited. Even though you might feel like this, it's very hard, you're not feeling good about it. Thank God you're not married yet, because now there's time for you to go ahead and really think about whether this person is the right person to invite into your life.
Now, we're not saying break up with you're done. We're not telling you to break up with your girlfriend, your boyfriend. We're not saying this. We're saying is take a good look at the relationship.
Identify.
Yes, and see what she's talking about, all the steps she's talking about. Are you one of these people sitting there saying, that's me, I'm this, I'm that, I take the abuse, or he's doing it for reasons, or she's doing it for reasons? Maybe if it's making you think, I have been saying, if it's making you think and you say, maybe it's me, it most likely it is you. Do you agree?
Well, sometimes yes and sometimes no.
There we go.
Because a manipulative person will make you feel like it's you. Okay. And then you'll start to believe it's you, when in essence, it may not be you. It could be actually that person. That's why you really need to...
All right, explain that. You said a manipulative person will think it's you. How would somebody do that? So they would know that they're going through the process of this. If somebody's manipulating them, how would they know? Give us an example.
Well, again, we're going down to the checklist. And I know it sounds like, why would you, we're talking about physical checklists. You have to write things down. I'm a firm believer writing them down, because when you write them down, it gets you really to think about the situation. Because we think about things in our mind, but we're not always checking and balancing them in our mind. So when you actually go on a sheet of paper and you start writing down things, what you were like before, and what maybe what your goals were before, and then you're realizing, are you still on the same path? Are you growing in this relationship? Is it evolving, or does it seem like it's always on one side, tipping the scale on one side, and it's not really a relationship where both of you are coming together? So what are the signs of manipulation? Well, first of all, the word itself, manipulation, is some people don't even know it's happening, right? You don't know it's happening at the time. You don't know it's happening.
You think it's love. You think they love you because they're being so honest with you. They're giving you compliments, but these compliments could be hidden messages that could be doubting you. Is that what you're saying?
Well, if they're giving you compliments, compliments are different from saying something negative about you. Like, if someone's saying to you, that does not look good on you, or, you used to be so much skinnier when I met you. And, they're just saying things, you're not exciting to me. You're not, all these different things, and or you're not doing enough, you're not doing enough, whatever it is. I mean, there's times maybe in the relationship you do need to pick up and do something. Well, maybe maybe in a relationship, there may be those moments when you do need to be better at something. But a person who really loves you, again, the thing is, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So a person who really loves you, if they really care about you, they're going to want to say it in the right way. They're going to say, listen, baby, when we first met, I felt really good about us. We were exercising all the time. We were doing all these things together. And now it seems like we kind of lost our way. We're just going through the life, or the day-to-day things. We're not really doing things like we used to. That's a real conversation. But if you're in a relationship where the person's always blaming you, we're not doing this because of you, we're not doing this, and it's just constant minimizing, well, then you got to start paying attention. Is this person really, you need to start taking a real look. Make your checklist. Before you met this person and after, where's the relationship going? Are you growing, or are you dying in this relationship?
So what are you saying, though? You're telling them to break up with the person?
Well, see, the thing is that on this show, we will never, ever tell our viewers what to do.
Okay.
Our viewers are totally empowered to make the decision on what to do. See, that's the thing about being, a great coach, is telling people that the tools of what they need to do is already inside them. They just need the courage that they're looking for is already inside you.
And this is not, let me make this personal here. This is not just for husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend. This is also for your friends, your parents and all. And we're a good example of that, because she has her talents, I have my talents, and we complement each other. We praise one another. We don't down one another, and we don't, we're not even competitive with one another. And many of you have friends out there, they're competitive with you, they're jealous of you, and they want to be top you, and that's not the way it's supposed to be too, or that's not a true friendship as well. So it doesn't make it a spouse or a husband and wife or even a family member, whatever. It has to do with you personally, and we're talking about from our own personal experiences. You have talent, I have talent. We don't minimize ourselves here, so we have a right to say this because we're talking from our experiences.
And that's the biggest thing, is really talking about love, because when you really love somebody, right?
Yes.
When you really, really love somebody, you lift them.
Yeah.
Okay, and sometimes you have to say things that sometimes you have to have difficult conversations, right? We have to have them to grow, but it's how we say it, and it's also whether or not we're committed to let that person know. Like, let's say we say something and maybe it didn't come out right. Is that person saying, listen, honey, I am so sorry. Gosh, honey, I didn't even realize how ugly that sounded until it came out. Is that person saying that? Or are they just leaving it for you to go ahead and swim in for a while? You know what I mean? There's a lot of things that can happen. But you're right. I mean, controlling is actually one of the examples of a toxic relationship. Mm-hmm. If you're in a relationship where your spouse or your significant other is always trying to compete with you versus trying to compliment you, that's an example of a toxic relationship. Now, there's healthy competition, and then there's competition that starts to take effect on your spirit, where you start to identify, like, that person's really not loving me. They're not lifting me. They're actually trying to make me feel little. Start paying attention to those signs.
I think this is where this show comes in handy. We're trying to give you some leadways on what to look. It's not saying that, when your spouse walks in the door, or your friend walks in the door, or even your parents walk in the door, that you're saying, wow, they're doing this to me. This is what they're talking about. You have to, I believe, you tell them, this could be changed.
Yes,
it can be changed where they would say to the person, hey, you know what? I don't like being minimalized. I don't like what you're doing. I don't like this. I mean, is that possible to say it?
Let's talk about that, because that's about getting your power back. And the answer is yes. Definitely have a conversation with somebody about that, because I think the most important thing you can do is let them know is, listen, I can take criticism. I can take it, but it's not, again, saying it's not what you say, it's how you're saying it. But yes, take your power back and say, you know what? I don't feel that the way you said that was right to me. I think you need to start thinking about how you're saying things to me, because I'm not listening to you when you talk to me like that. I mean, how many times you get in a conversation where that person's saying something and you just turn them off? You're not even listening to them anymore.
And that should be a sign right there too. If the person you're talking to doesn't want to listen to you, then they're saying, I don't want to hear you. I don't want to hear you. And that's wrong too, because that's not going into a good relationship as well. But to minimize yourself and to minimize each other because there's no communication, or you think there's communication on one side and you're too busy thinking of what they're doing wrong or what you're doing wrong, I believe it's not what you're doing wrong or what they're doing wrong. I think you just sit back, watch the relationship going. Don't make excuses. Don't not make excuses for your mate or for yourself, because if there's something happening, you're going by your intuition. Always go by your intuition. I always say the intuition is like an angel on your shoulder. It's trying to say to you, don't do it. We're telling you, we're giving you all the signs. You're screaming, you're yelling, you don't get along with this person, you don't get along with your friend, you don't get along with this one. What's happening is that little angel on your shoulder is saying, I'm giving you signs. This is going to get worse, not better. It's for wrong motives. We're not telling you to break up. What we're telling you to do is to take a good look at yourself, or take a good look at the person we're talking about.
And get your power back. That's what we're talking about, getting your power back. Because the minute you start seeing things, the signs of a toxic relationship, first of all, you're getting your power back. You're starting to realize it, because you were swimming in so much doubt before. You're like, maybe it is me, Yeah, I'm not this, I'm not that. You're saying that over and over and over again. You start to believe it. We're saying, no, wait a minute. Don't believe everything you hear yet. Take a minute, take a look at yourself, because, God's designed you to be perfect in your own way. And maybe there's some things you need to work on that you could tweak like everybody else. No one is, perfect. We all need things to work on, but it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And if you're in a relationship that's giving you these signs, this is about getting your power back. And I actually want to talk about, in addition to this, about toxic, because we talked about we talked about on some other shows, verbal abuse and physical abuse. Verbal abuse is so impactful on a person's life. It is something that people need to pay attention of, and that's a sign of a toxic relationship. So let's give examples of a situation where someone be a verbal abuse. What are some examples that you think you've experienced before?
Well, verbal abuse is saying that it could be anything with verbal abuse. I mean, but you're taking it to heart. But you see, I'm not looking at it that way. I'm looking at it, if you're getting verbal abuse and you're taking it to heart, then it's something that you're lacking. And if it's something that you're lacking, then you better take a good look at yourself. As you were talking there, I'm thinking, well, you know what? The toxic doesn't start with your mate. It starts with you inside. Maybe this is your family. Maybe this is how you were treated growing up. Maybe this is how you were brought up. And you were put down so much, happens every day with your mother, your father, whatever. You're put down so much that this has become your personality. So instead of blaming somebody else, the other person just stepped in their shoes. So what I've always said, you married your mother, you married your father, because they stepped in your shoes and they know it. So that's called a manipulation part. And they're taking advantage of that, which is really bad, because you don't even know it. You don't know, because you're so used to habit growing up and you're telling this to everybody. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't, but you're saying it to your spouse. And that spouse is taking it all in to know, hey, I know what to do. I know what her mother did to her. I know what her father did to her. And I know how to get to her now, called control.
That is such a great point, because a lot of times what happens is exactly what happens. People have relationships with their mother or father where they were put down a lot, or they were controlled. They couldn't make a decision without their mom or dad's approval, and so they've lived all of that. They're always worried about what mom and dad's are going to say, or whatever it is. They got this mindset, or what they thought of. And so they were conditioned. They just had this lifestyle as a child, and now they're adults. And they don't know how to step out of it. And so you're exactly right. They're inviting somebody in their life because that's all they know.
And on top of it, it's a dual. I'm going to say it's a double whammy, because not only you were raised with a certain condition, what to do and not to do, but the person was also raised with a certain condition. So you get those two conditions together. He was raised, she was raised with, maybe, sad enough to say, but it could be toxic parents as well. And if you're raised with toxic parents, the both of yous, well, what's going to happen? It's called habit, not control anymore. It's called habit. And both of yous are going to relive your families and not know why. And then not know why you're either not getting along. Let's say a husband and wife are fighting. Let's say your mother and father fights all the time, and you see them fighting all the time as a child. So you're sitting there thinking, wow, this is normal. This is normal. They're fighting all the time. This is normal. But it's not normal. It's toxic.
Not normal.
It's not normal. It's a toxic thing. Now, at the same time, your father or mother has more control than the other. Now, as your mother and father has more control than the other, you're growing up, you meet someone, and that one person says, I don't like your lipstick. I don't like your top. I don't like your weight. I don't like your hair. Wow, my mother used to say that. And I love my mother. I love my father. Well, this must be the perfect person for me, because they're imitating my parents, and this is what my parents did. Wrong. If your parents were toxic to you and they didn't know it because they were raised by their parents, you're getting raised, and guess what? You're in a relationship because you're not even thinking. This may not even be you. We have to resolve these problems, because it's going to just backfire on everybody in history, and it's just going to go on and on and on. And these toxic relationships is going to go on forever, because you don't know why. You don't know why you're imitating your mother or your father. You don't know why. You're not even thinking of it this way. Why? You don't want to hurt your mother and father. And you don't want to hurt your spouse, but it's coming out anyway. It's coming out. The abuse, you may not call it abuse, but it's abuse that's coming out. You're imitating someone in your family. I think the buck has to stop here on this show to start taking a good look at yourself, to say, hey, I got to start changing myself.
And that is a great point. That's why I always say, take out that sheet of paper and make out that checklist, because before you entered in this new relationship with someone, you have to ask yourself some serious questions. Were you really happy with who you were before you got into the relationship? Were you happy with your weight? Were you happy with your career goals? Were you happy with whatever is going on in your life, your financial situation? Were you happy before you got into that relationship? Because if the answer is, you know what, I really wasn't, then my first response is, are you really ready to get into a relationship, or do you want to start working on yourself first before you get into this relationship, so you're not inviting a toxic relationship into your life? Because you're attracting that of which you emulate. So if you're not feeling good about yourself, and you're not feeling, you're not setting yourself on a path of a sense of your goals, you're actually going to get off track, because you're inviting, because you don't even know what you're doing anymore. You're just inviting things into your life without really recognizing it. So you definitely want to make that list. That's very important, before you met this person and where you are now.
Well, I call it down the wrong path, the wrong road. And sometimes you go down the wrong road is because you're lonely. It's because you want to get married. It's because I know you have your own reasons out there, but there's a whole list of reasons out there where you're going to make excuses for the other party. And when you make those excuses for the other party, that's toxic. You shouldn't have to make excuses for what they're doing wrong. If they're abusing you, if they're not abusing you, and they're imitating your parents, that now you're getting a whole picture by saying, yeah, my mother's like this, my father's like this. Wow, my husband is like this. My husband is like his father, my father. Well, it's making you think. We're not going to tell you what to do, but if it's making you think, and you're going to say, you know what, this has to be changed. What would happen if I say to my husband, you know what, stop telling me, stop saying that I'm this, stop saying that I'm that. What would you do? He may like it, he may not like it, or he may be honest with you or not be, but you'll never know until you ask these questions. As she said take little notes, because you'll forget everything that's happening in that relationship until you mark it down on a book. And if you go back to the chapter, you're going to say, wow, this happened 4 months ago. And it happened 4 months ago. Now it happened again and again. Now I want to know. Maybe he was the wrong person. Maybe she was the wrong person, and I never knew it. I'm too busy making excuses for me and for them. Open up your eyes, people. We're trying to save you right now.
Get your power back. That's what we're talking about. Get your power back. That's so important. And and here's another thing that is considered abuse that sometimes people don't talk about. I want to make sure we talk about it. When people don't talk at all, have you heard of people that their silence? Sometimes their partners will just ignore them. They'll get into an argument and they'll stay silent for days and days, or they won't even call them if they're dating somebody. And that's to that other person. The other person on the other side, it's torture to them because they're not used to having someone who's disconnecting, and they're trying to say, oh, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. There's people that are married where their spouses for days and days don't talk to each other. He or she won't talk to their spouse, and that other spouse is dying on the inside because it's killing them because they really want to be able to speak, but now they're getting the silent treatment, and silent treatment itself can be abusive. It's definitely abusive. And you got to start recognizing that if it doesn't feel right to you, follow that instinct. You need to recognize this is not something that's healthy. You need to step up and say something about it.
But maybe, is it possible, and I'm sure it's possible for the people out there to say, well, yeah, but the only reason why my boyfriend never calls me, she never calls me. But the problem is I'm afraid to say something. I'm afraid to be honest with him because then he'll never call me up again and ask me out again.
Well, you know what?
That's insecurity within themselves, though, correct?
Exactly. I say, you know what? Step up and say something. Have the courage to say something. A person really loves you.
It's got to work two ways.
Yes, definitely. You got to. Here's the alternative. Do you really want to be in a relationship that ultimately is going to be killing you at the end because you decided not to do what you know you needed to do, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my goodness, I'm married, I have kids, and then we have divorce and all this other stuff? Stop the insanity of that happening to your life. Have the courage to get up and step up to say, this really makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't like how this makes me feel. And once you start saying that, the person in front of you, you'll know the self-esteem of the person in front of you. Because if once you start having those kinds of conversations, if that person really loves you, they're going to look at you and really listen. But if that person feels like, oh my gosh, and they can't believe, they're going to try to make you feel bad. If sometimes someone who's really insecure on the other side, when you start stepping up, they're going to start blaming you and making you feel bad and all this other stuff because they can't believe that you're starting to get strong again. They start seeing that strength come out of you. You're like, oh my gosh, this is somebody I'm going to have that obviously I cannot manipulate anymore.
We see that's the manipulation is there when they're constantly praising you and praising you and praising you, but maybe they have a motive and you don't know because you think, oh, they're complimenting me. She's complimenting me, everything I do, what I dressed or whatever. And maybe there's a motive. Maybe her motive is, I want to get married. Maybe his motive is, well, I want to have sex. So whatever motive they have, they're coming across as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and they're coming across as wrong people. So they're going to be the idol that you're looking at, you think is an idol, but it could be Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde because they got wrong motives. Now, how do you know the right motives? Well, I have an old saying, actions speak louder than words. You don't have to fight with somebody. I don't have to fight with anybody that I'm in love with. I don't have to fight because there's such a thing as called communication. It's called talk. And if I have to fight with somebody, then I'm lacking something or they're lacking something that's stopping it. So you have to look at that too. If you're a husband or wife, anything, if you're lacking something within yourself, you have to look at that before the other party, because it could be you, or it could be by saying something's wrong. Something's wrong here. It's not making sense to me. And the other party may not care. They may not care if it's making sense because they have their motives too. It could be anything. They may want to get married. The girl may want to have children. She may want to get pregnant. She may want to do anything just to get you in the life of her life and to get that magic dream that she wants that she's lacking. So there's so much. Oh
my goodness. And let's talk about that, because how many times we hear stories about people getting married, maybe it's the second time around and you saw all the warning signs. They meet this great guy or this great girl in the first year before they get married. Everything is great, and all of a sudden they get married, and before you know it, the person that they were dating has a major financial issue. They got married, truthfully, they didn't get married for love. They got married for financial security. Wow. And how many times you hear stories like that where people get married and they're like, oh my goodness, because they really did not marry this person because they love them. They married this person because they saw that there was a way for them to gain some financial security. And then all of a sudden what happens? During the relationship, those aha moments, those hidden signs that, you didn't see at the beginning, like you talk manipulation starts happening. And then all of a sudden you start seeing signs of toxicity. The abuse, the manipulation, and then you're already in too far because you got married and you ended up sharing everything. So now what are you going to do?
Well, what happens there, though? What happens if they're in a relationship and one is a deceiver, one is trying to get the manipulation of everything, and they think they really got it over on you?
You got to let them know you know it.
Well,
you know it.
You have to let them know you know it.
Yes.
But suppose you don't know it.
Well, that's the whole point. People do. They at some
they
point
have a gut feeling.
Sometimes it's too late. You don't know it sometimes until it's too late. But I think once you realize what's going on, you got to let them know you know, because the abuse will start to the abuse will start to end once you start stepping up to confront the issue, because they're taking advantages on the fact that you probably don't know. Or that
what happens with a couple now? Okay, as you said that, I'm thinking of another couple. What happens when a couple says, but I'm going to take the abuse because if I don't have them, I'll have no one, and I'm going to be lonely for the rest of my life. So I don't take this abuse. I'm going to take it. Everything they dish out, I'm going to take, because I'm going to be lonely for the rest of my life. What do you say to those people?
I say, oh my goodness, if you could only see what you're saying right now, in that you've just minimized yourself so much. You're allowing yourself to feel as if God will not restore your life when He will. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. You don't feel good enough about yourself, and your thought about being lonely is that maybe God will introduce someone who's going to be amazing to you. That's what I would say to somebody.
In other words, keep on looking. Don't stop. And look
raise
within
the bar.
Yeah,
raise the bar with your partner. Tell them what you expect. Tell them what you want. Tell them what's important to you. Again, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. But I believe that if you're in a relationship where that person's becoming manipulating and you feel it's manipulating, or you start seeing the signs, you need to let them know, I know what you're doing, and it's going to stop.
But again, I went back to the point where if they can't, because they don't want to, they're afraid of losing them, because they're afraid they lost that person that's constantly praising them, and it's a manipulation part, but they don't want to lose them either.
What I would say is come to our workshop.
Yeah, well, you know what?
Come to our workshop.
Yeah, we have workshops all over the place, and
we're going to be in every city. We're going to be talking about a lot of things. You definitely need to come to the workshop, because we're going to talk about the things that you probably you may not know it as of yet, but we're going to actually go down to the nitty gritty, and it's actually a conversation with yourself. You'll come to our workshop. The information that we're going to be giving you is going to give you the opportunity to sit down and really think about where you were, where you are, and what you want. And then you can make some decisions based on it.
And we're not exempt. Again, we're not exempt at these seminars, not on these shows, but at these seminars, we're going to say it like it is. We're going to talk about our own personal, we may talk about our own personal, intuitions, why we know so much on this, and why we became, knowledgeable to see what the rest of the world is doing and why the rest of the world is hurting and how to get out of it. It's not saying everybody's strong out there. We're going to try to make everybody strong enough to, if you see it, correct the problem. And if you can't correct the problem, then there's something wrong. Make it harder. Do something harder to correct the problem. And if you're still staying in that relationship, well, then guess what? You're going to stay there. You're stagnant. Then I always say stagnant, move on, or just stay where you're at. I don't think you want to stay where you're at, because you're hurting. This is why the suicides are up. That's why the divorce rates are up. And everybody, it's they want a partner. Or do they really want a partner? I mean, we're going to talk about that too. What do you really want? I mean, I always say this expression. I always say to people, what do you really want? Because sometimes their answers is what they really, is their answer. What they want or what they don't want in life. And sometimes they give themselves the answer. You may be giving yourself the answer as you're watching this to say, well, I already know what I want. Well, then you gave yourself the answer.
Yeah, well, for me, it always comes down to really what is your relationship with yourself and your creator. If you really, when you start taking more time for yourself and you start identifying certain things, and then what happens is your level of expectation and your level of awareness expands. So once you start spending more time on yourself, you're actually going to allow yourself to get better, because you're going to focus on yourself. There's no distractions. In fact, sometimes people use relationships as a distraction because they don't want to focus on themselves, because they want somebody to blame.
Okay.
So, we got to be careful who we identify as a toxic relationship, because the relationship that may be toxic is the one within yourself. Okay. Maybe the relationship started toxic with you and now you're inviting toxicity, because you're not taking care of yourself. Sometimes that can happen as well. So we want to make sure that our viewers are out there, they really do come to the workshop, because it's really going to help them identify where they were before, where they are now, and where they want to go.
It's interesting. I said I wasn't going to get personal, but I will get personal. It's interesting when you have parents that constantly, tell you what to do and not to do and everything else, and you're prone to this at all times. And then you find a relationship, and when you're in the relationship, the person is like walks, you're God to them, and then because you're God to them, and you're saying, oh my God, I'm God to this person, but you're really not, because it's his lacking. It's the person's lacking in what he's giving to you, but it's his own personal, what he got from his parents. So he figures, I'll do anything just to keep a relationship up. And I didn't know it. Let's say I didn't know it because of my family, or he didn't know it. So what's happening is, because we both don't know it, we're joined forces, and it became so toxic that it became Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde within the two of us. And it was pretty scary. So you have to look at, if you're not married out there, take a look at yourself. Take a deep look at yourself. Take a good look at your spouse. If you said, when in doubt, don't. That's what I always say. When in doubt, don't. Because if you have a question, if you're about to get married, let's say you're about to get married, and it's next week, it's no harm. It's nothing to call the wedding off. It's nothing to call the wedding off, because it'll hurt you for the rest of your life, and then you'll blame someone else because you had to get married. So if you're saying, something's wrong with this picture, I shouldn't be getting married, she's there for me at all times. She loves me. She's the only girl that's been there for me at all times. But something's wrong here. Something's lacking. Well, it's telling you. Your subconscious again is telling you. It's knocking.
It's saying, pay attention. That's what it's happening. It's knocking. It's their soul knocking at them, saying, pay attention. Yeah. And, if you need to call off the wedding, call it off, because, you're inviting, what you're doing is, if you're questioning it before, if you're questioning so much before, those are signs right there. You have to start identifying that. Don't make any plans until the signs are clear that you're on the right path.
Yes, yes. And you know what? You'll have a long, healthy marriage. Now, what does it take? The old saying is, how long do you have to know your partner before it becomes toxic, or love, or relationships? How long? Now, that's the next question everybody's asking out there. How long do you really have to know your partner? Do you think you know your partner? The old saying is, I was told, you don't have to know your partner for years and years and years. How many people have you known for years and years and years, but you're really not in love with them? So how long do you have to know your partner? Maybe all these things that were missing in you now are coming together with a partner. And all the pieces that are missing, that are coming together, you're looking at a whole new different ball game. Now, how do you feel? I'll tell you how you feel. You want to talk, you want to communicate, you want to laugh, you want to joke, you want to have them involved, you want to do everything with them. And if there's something missing, open up your eyes. There's something missing.
And open up your mouth.
And open up your mouth.
Open up your mouth. Get your power back.
I love it. Get your power back. Because if you're getting married tomorrow, don't. I mean, I know it sounds horrible, but a lot of people will stop that wedding. How much is it going to cost to stop a wedding for next year's divorce? And it's going to cost you a big lesson in return. You're going to say, well, he was, knight in shining armor to me. He was my, this and this and this. She was my this and this and this. She was the only girl that loved me with all my heart and soul. But guess what? If that little angel on your shoulder is saying, well, let me think of this, let me think of that, something is wrong. And if you think something is wrong, it is wrong. And that's what you have to listen to, your heart.
And and we're telling you this first and foremost is because we truly love you. We want to make sure that you don't get into a place where you're regretful later. I mean, we've studied the court systems back and forth, in every which way. And the core of the issues that are happening in the court systems with these divorces is that what they thought they were getting into didn't end up being what they got into, because they did not take those steps before they got married to really identify who they were in a relationship with. And so what happens is the blame game starts happening, and the court systems are filled. And it's not just about the divorce itself and how tragic that is in itself. It's also what happens to the kids, because then the kids get affected, and then the cycle just continues. So really, when we're talking about toxic relationships, if you're in it before, right now, if you're in it before, let's talk about before marriage and after. If you're in it before you got married, let's say you're identified you're in a toxic relationship. First of all, celebrate. You know it. You're in a toxic relationship. Most people don't acknowledge it. Celebrate. No. I know that I'm in a toxic relationship. Now the question is, what are you going to do about it? And how are you going to take care of it? And that's what I'm saying is get out that checklist and really start to identify where you were before and where you are now, and then start making some steps. And if you don't have the courage yet to really identify, you got to come to the workshop. We're going to show you how you can develop the courage and get to that next place. You got to start, you definitely want to come to the workshop because it's going to help you get the courage that you need, because we're going to tell you there are solutions that are in place. So that's the first thing that you want to do. So it's celebrating that you know you're in a toxic relationship, and then taking action, which is that sheet of paper, making a list. Now, let's say you're already married, because we're all about saving marriages. We definitely want a saving marriage. We don't want to see people go through divorce. If we can prevent divorce, that's what our goal is, save the marriage. So I am a firm believer it's time to take action. Get your power back. How do you get your power back? Start communicating. Start talking about it. Not yelling, not attacking, but talking about it.
You know, it's interesting how many out there are saying to themselves, and in a courtroom, if you're getting a divorce, and if you're not getting a divorce, how many out there are saying to their friends, their neighbors, their family, by saying, well, when I met him, he changed. She changed. How could they change? People don't change. I mean, it's their character, their personality, but they still have the same character. They still have the same personality. So when you say, well, he used to open up the door for me, or she used to do this, or she did that, or she changed this, or he changed that, people aren't changing. What's changing is their real character is coming out. You know, there's songs out there, and actually Josie sings one of those songs. But the thing is, the couples can be married for ages, and it's not that they're changing. Their character remains the same. So whenever I hear the statement, and I step in right away when I hear, wow, my husband is not like when I married him. He's changed. My wife is not like when I married her. She changed. They're not changing. Something in the marriage changed because two people, you got so comfortable with a simple piece of paper that it made you so secure that your character and your personality is coming out like this. And when it comes out like this, your other spouse is saying, I didn't know that was even in them, and I've known them for 20 years. But their character is coming out. How do you tell a character of a person? It's simple. It's simple. You know, it's your gut feeling. It's your gut feeling. You know, you compromise. As she says, talking. You know, you do know how to talk. If you see the problem within yourself, then let your spouse know, hey, you know what? This is what's happening with me. And they're going to communicate back and forth. So you don't have to say, I'm quiet, or go to your room, or I'm going for a drive, or whatever. I'm going out. I'm going to get drunk. I'm going out with my friends, or I'm going to work. You don't have to say this to your friends, because that's the sign your character is already there, but it's changing. And that character is going to get worse and worse. If they're making excuses why they don't want to communicate with you and then change the subject, no, you have to look at yourself now.
And so let's actually talk about, so if you're in a toxic relationship, you're married, you know, maybe some of the things you can go to is you can go to your spouse and say, listen, honey, you know, I don't like where this is going. I don't feel good about where the relationship is right now. I feel like my goals have not been met, and maybe I'm sure your goals have not been met. You know, let's regroup. I love you enough to at least want to reconnect. Let's figure it out. Let's find a way to reconnect. You know, because I feel that, let's say the person feels like they're out of love with that person, because you're going to go through in love, out of love, different experiences. You want to say, listen, baby, I want to be in love. I want to feel passion. I want to get excited about us and our lives again, but we've gotten so regular that nothing else excites me anymore. Let's figure out a way to really get things exciting again, get it spicy.
Sometimes. The reason when you say that, it's an interesting topic. Well, the passion goes out of the marriage. Why? The love goes out of the marriage when it's love and in love and all this kind of stuff. And sometimes because their attraction is to other people. And if the attraction is to other people, this is where it starts separating just a little bit, just maybe an inch. But their separation is with somebody else. And that somebody else, that's a wake-up call too. Because it's saying toxic. That's a wake-up call too, by saying that little inch is going to take a foot. It's going to go longer and longer. And then that marriage is going to, because now it's going to get more toxic that you really don't want to talk. And that person's going to go to someone else. And if they don't go to someone else, they're toxic more than you are, because they have more of a problem than you are. You're trying to correct your problem. And they're saying, no, whatever you do, you're there for me. I'm there. Well, guess what? They're toxic because you're waking up. You're learning the course. And there's many husbands out there that I know of right now that they're they thought they were so in love with their wives, and now the table has turned, and it's not just husbands cheat, it's also wives. But the tables have turned where they're seeing, wow, this has been there all along. I just didn't see it. Well, now open up your eyes, because this could be a wake-up call, and a wake-up call for you to say, either I'm not going to get married to this person, I want to make it work, and if I can make it work, the average person will say, well, let's go to a marriage counselor. You know what? I've always said this, and I'm going to say it now, and this is my personal viewpoint. If you're not in love with somebody and you're screaming and yelling at them all the time, why would you want to go to a marriage counselor for them to hear you scream and yell all the time, to say, well, I'm missing this and I'm missing that, I'm missing this?
I'm totally disagreeing with you.
Well, you can disagree.
I'm totally disagreeing with you. Yes, I'm going to say go out and see that marriage counselor. I'm going to say do whatever it takes to fight for your marriage and fight to make it work. And if you can. Hold on, I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going to tell you why.
Go ahead.
Because sometimes you need a professional to step in on the outside, because the two of you might think you know it all, and there's someone on the outside who's saying, let me tell you what I'm seeing from both of you.
Okay.
You need an outside professional to step in. I think it's very, very imperative. And I do believe that if you're once in love with this person, you can fall in love with them again if two people are willing to commit to wanting to be back together again. It's just that so you just make a decision for yourself to say, there's no chance, I'm not interested. You keep saying that to yourself over and over and over again, and then of course that result would happen. But what if you actually just said, you know what? I knew there was a reason why I said I do to you. I knew there was a reason, maybe they really were in love at one point, but they kind of lost their way.
Well,
maybe it can happen. It can happen.
Now, I know it can happen, but you see, I've my theory too. My theory is, if you're in love with your spouse, you're constantly over and over, and every day you become more and more in love with your spouse, where every day is different. Every day you're in love with the same person and a different person, because every day they're in your life and every day they're making it known to you. So you're constantly being in love with the same person every day. Now, haven't you heard this from your family? From couples that have been married for like 60 years. Haven't you heard this by saying, I'm in love with my spouse every day, and every day is something new, and every day it's never boring, and every day I am in love with the same person I'm in love with the person I married over and over again. This is my look of love and marriage, not for a guy, an outside doctor, to say, well, you're cheating and you're not supposed to be, because it's against the marriage laws, and you're supposed to be more communication. Well, I don't have the communication because I don't have the feelings no more. Well, get the feelings. How can you get the feelings back when you lost it? You're either in love or out of love. So this is why I say when you have a good marriage, you're falling in love all over again.
So now I'm going to have to get right into it, because for me, I'm going to tell you something right now. I really believe it's your relationship with God and really getting yourself back on track, because a relationship is not going to be all lollipops and circuses every day. You're not going to have all this excitement and celebration and everything is going to be wonderful every single day. You're going to have rough spots.
Yes,
you're going to have rough moments.
Of course.
You're going to get mad at your partner. You're going to have questions. You're going to be offended. It's going to be natural.
Of course.
But if you have a relationship with God and your Creator, you're going to get back on track. It's going to keep you on track. That's the thing. So as far as toxic relationships.
Wait, stop.
Okay.
How many people? Okay. How many people, let's say the husband is cheating.
Okay.
Right? Now, you say relationship with God. I'm agreeing there 100%. This is what I meant by in love every day with the spouse over and over again. That's a relationship with God, because God's making it happen. Suppose you're in a relationship and the spouse is cheating.
Yes.
And you're saying, well, I want to talk about this. Why are you cheating? Well, you're not the same as you were when I married you. Well, you're not the same either. So then they're going into a toxic relationship, because they never even knew what the meaning of the word love was when they got into the relationship. They were marrying again their mother and father.
I say, again, go see your counselor, go see a marriage counselor.
Or come to our seminars.
No, come to the workshop. Here's what I'm going to say about that really quick. First of all, there's always a story behind every situation. There's me, and I'm not saying it's not excusable, period. I want to make sure that's very clear. It's not excusable to be someone having an affair relationship. It's not excusable. But here's what I'm going to say about it. Sometimes things happen in a relationship where that person in the marriage is not giving that other person what they feel they need, and for a considerable amount of time, which could lead someone. Remember, the devil is here to rob, steal, and destroy. Okay? He wants to wait for that opportunity to come into that marriage to rob anything that's happening in there. So what's happening is the people get this illusion to think that the person outside that they're attracted to is the answer. that person outside is not the answer. You're just
Yes.
looking for an opportunity to release
I'm
and
agreeing
find
with
some
you.
joy somewhere else because you don't have joy
I'm
in the
agreeing
relationship.
with you.
So go see your marriage counselor. That's
Well,
most
I
important.
disagree there.
Go see a marriage counselor and
Go to church.
and definitely, okay, we're going to be united on this one. Definitely go to church and find a relationship with your creator, find a relationship with God, because that is always going to help the relationship grow. And I would say, both of you, husband and wife, get committed. In fact, that would be the first conversation I would have and say, honey, are you willing to go to church with me? Are you willing to talk more about how we can get together? Because I know that, that it's written that if we still stay committed to each other, and even though we're not in love with each other, listen, you might look at somebody and say, I am not in love with you. I don't like anything about you, on and on and on and on. But that person looks at you and says, let's say the person's looking at you and say, you know what, but I still love you. And I want to find a way, and sometimes someone will say, I'm not interested. That's too late, whatever. Sometimes you really need to take a look at it and say, there was a moment in time when I was in love with this person. I said I do. I said I was committed to a lifetime together. So are you truly committed to that? Are you going to make that happen? Are you going to try at least? Are you going to make an effort to try to make it happen before you step out? And my recommendation is at least try, because if you really knew what's going on right now in the court system and the divorce, it's devastation. But here's the thing. If you're in a toxic relationship, which is the point of our show, the most important thing is identify and then start taking action on what you're going to do with identifying your toxic relationship.
And if you are not married, and don't dare get married for the sake of just being whatever reasons that you may have, whatever reasons that anybody's telling you. I mean, and I think half of the list. Your mother and father is saying, I think you should get married, somebody to take care of you. Your friends, all your friends are married. You're saying, well, I'm out of the loop right now. So you have to take a good look, because if you look at the divorce rates today, they had to be for reasons. There's just not reasons that people were madly in love with one another, because they're not making it work. As I'm disagreeing with her when it comes to this marriage counselor, because half of these marriage counselors are divorced. So, and half of these marriage counselors are just directing them from their own personal. I personally know 2 marriage counselors, and they're divorced twice, and they're directing their patients by saying, well, whoever they were in the right with, the husband or the wife, you have to look at yourself. You have to look, as she says, you have to look at yourself. To me, you have to look at God. That's one. And with God, then you have to look at yourself to say some prayers and say, God, is this the direction you want me to go to? And if it's not, give me signs. Give me signs. And it's not the sign of one person. One person can direct you. But who's going to direct you? I constantly say it. It's your heart. Your heart's going to direct you. Your head's going to direct you.
Your heart and your head is going to direct you, but sometimes you need somebody on the outside who's a professional to step in. And here's what I'm going to say about that. We could talk about any profession. There's doctors that are good and bad. There's different situations, good and bad.
Yes.
There's all these people that can be good and bad, and they're given professions. Do your homework.
No, wait a minute. This
do
is
your homework.
Perfect.
Go
this
see somebody.
This is perfect. Josie and I are partners in this Guardian Angels of Justice and Peace. Josie and I right now have a disagreement.
And we love each other through the process.
And we love each other to death.
That is really a great point.
And let me tell you, because, now this is great. This is why when she said it, I don't need a marriage counselor to say, not to listen to her. She doesn't need a marriage counselor, even though I'm disagreeing with marriage counselors. She doesn't need a marriage counselor to say, hey, can you step in and say who's right and who's wrong?
Well,
do you know why?
Because we're not married. We
No,
don't need a marriage counselor because we're not married.
No, I'm not talking about a marriage counselor. What I'm saying is the situation.
Yes.
The situation is, if you love someone, all you have to do is communicate. Am I right?
We don't have to agree on everything.
Exactly.
We're
not agreeing.
Well, you know what? Here's the great thing. You're telling me what your opinion is, right? I'm telling you what mine is. But somewhere along here, you know what? I guarantee there's some things that you're saying that is giving me something to think about. And there's some things that I'm saying that's giving you something to think about. And that's really progress.
Which is good, because we're telling them what to do, what not to do, but we're actually doing it ourselves.
Yes.
And they're seeing this. So this is why I brought this up.
Yes.
And no, we're not married. We're going to be. We're No, that was a joke. People.
We're soul sisters. And here's the best thing is that you're looking for a soulmate.
Yeah.
Right? You're searching for a soulmate. And whether it's a relationship with, right now we're talking about relationships with a significant person in your life, and this is the most important thing.
Communication
is the key. Get your power back and start having some open communication.
Get your power back. Get the communication back. So it could be anything, and it could be with your own parents even. It could be a mother and daughter, mother and son. It could be with anything, that communication. When you see something's wrong with this picture, you know, I mean, Josie and I disagree with times. We disagree, you know, with many things at times.
Yes.
But it's not going to say, well, I don't like what you're saying because you're not agreeing with me. No, why? I'd be in control. Same with her. So we hear each other's viewpoints. That's what you should be doing.
Yes.
Learn from us. And if you learn from us on how to do and say and get the power back, maybe, you know, you'd be sitting there and saying, you know, I think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to do that. Instead of screaming and yelling all the time, I'm going to do this, and give our viewpoints away with it. Josie, as usual, this hour goes so quick.
Yes.
And when we talk about topics, and the topic is to heal the people out there and heal ourselves. And my final word, then we'll go to your final word, then we're going to go to our theme song, which we all know, which I'm not even going to say the name of it. But my final word is, you know, when it comes to marriages, I've been there, did it, done it, you know, and I'm not that I'm an expert at it, but I've learned, and I learned from my mistakes, and I will never go back to a past mistake that I've learned from. And I will let the people know, I don't care if it's hurtful for me, hurtful for somebody out there, it's my lesson. And if my lesson can bring you to another stage, I'm going to do it. And I'm not going to do it to, you know, minimize anything that you're doing or what you're going through. I'm actually giving you, this is what I learned from this. You take it or leave it, but this is what I learned from this. Josie?
I think the biggest thing is, you know, there's a point in everybody's life when things start becoming real, and you start realizing things that are painful in your life. And there was a moment in my life where I really, you know, had a conversation with God. I just, you know, going through a divorce, it's believe me, it's not glamorized in any shape or form. It's really tough to go through a divorce. And that's what the whole process of these shows is to really save people marriages. And before you get married, start thinking about it, taking some responsible action so that you're making better choices for your life. So the biggest thing I want to tell you is that God has a great plan and purpose for you, and to not give up on yourself. And we're committed to making sure that we do everything we can to empower you and to give you the love that you need and the support that you need to get you from where you are now, where you really want to be.
And, you know, this is the Garden Angels that we're on every week, and we're going to be doing, you know, attend our workshops, go to our work. We're going to end the show with the theme song of the Garden Angels. This is actually what we talked about today. When you see that couple, I want to be just like that couple, and everybody wants to be just like that couple. But you know what? It takes not just hard work. It takes a lot of love, a lot of deep love to get what that couple is feeling. And it's not just, you know, a mirage. And this is the theme song of the Garden Angels, and the title of it is
I Want to Love Just Like That. So stay focused on what you want, and God will give it to you.
This is Josie and Pearl
for the Guardian Angels of Justice and Peace. God bless everybody.
Look at them dancing as they go across the floor. Twisting and turning and yearning for so much more. And every night you'll find them at the bay. Laughing and talking all about yesterday. Just look at them gazing as he touches her head. She smiles and tells him that she's so glad that she's there. And I wanna love like that. I wanna love like that. So don't ever tell me that long love just cannot be found. 'Cause when you look for it, you'll find that it's all around. So don't ever tell me that long love just cannot be found. 'Cause when you look for it, you'll find that it's all